This cinema could have been sold for during the 1980s property boom, when the cinema was making no money at all. It has been heavily subsidized by other businesses that my father has had, but Gibraltar could not go without a cinema. And when the Regal cinemas were being closed, and there was nothing for Gibraltarians to do because the frontier was closed, my father would not leave Gibraltar without a cinema, albeit it was to his detriment, because he could have sold this or built on this and made a bomb, because we were born into a family with entertainment ties dating back to the 1800s, so it's in the blood.
Almost everyone enjoys a good film. A good film's like a good novel told with beautiful images. And there's something magical about watching a good film in the cinema. For decades now, one family has managed the cinema experience for Gibraltar. But the Benatars were involved in entertainment long before the leisure cinemas and long before the Queen cinema.
In 1721, there was a treaty of peace signed between the United Kingdom and Morocco, which was in fact negotiated by Benatar for the king of Morocco, of Fez, where it gave Jews and Moors the right to work and live in Gibraltar. I think maybe since that is when the Benatar family came from Morocco to Gibraltar. It's something that we're looking at our family tree and going back and back and seeing where it takes us. Teatro Benatar was inaugurated in 1890. I believe it was 2 years after the Theatre Royal was closed and before it reopened. It closed in 1888, and the Teatro Benatar was open in 1890. It doubled up as a skating rink. From what I read, it seemed that it was built without quite the permits that it required, so it was forced to close down. The Theatre Royal opened, and the Teatro Benatar was dismounted and taken to Seville.
Okay, is it ready? Okay. That's a red number 1 for the film.
As far back as I remember, the first things that I remember Dad telling me about, he didn't always have his own business. He actually started working in the canneries, which was a canning factory down at Bayside.
Dad comes from a family of Moroccan Jews. My grandfather, from what we remember, he was an agent, a commission agent.
When he was in the GDF, and he was one of the youngest serving, he was 17, and he was a motorist. And he tells this story of a very, very important telegraph that he had to take up the rock. And he nearly killed himself because it was so important. They told him he had to do it very, very quickly.
During the war, his family were evacuated to Tangiers, and he stayed here with the GDF, and he lived, I believe, with the Cortés family in Irish Town during those war years. And but always, my uncles too, always wheeling and dealing and finding businesses wherever there was an opportunity.
First stories were when the tuna used to come in. They used to fish tuna, fresh tuna, bring it in, have them processed and canned. They also had what we believe a fruit. He started his own business on canning and processing, and that was corned beef. Dad gave it his all. It was his first venture and very successful that we know of. He was very dedicated to his work and always trying to find things to do himself, for himself and for the family.
Sometimes you go to see the face, the pictures, the sound, it's good. Once that again.
Dad used to work as a manager, I believe, in the assembly rooms before the cinema business, which is where the Queen Cinema is now. He used to run the place, and he used to organize all entertainments in the assembly rooms. And we have pictures of when the Queen Elizabeth came to Gibraltar in 1954, and there was a big dinner in the assembly rooms.
My father was employed as manager running the cinema. Of course, he'd done many other jobs before that. One of them was working in the assembly rooms, which was where the cinema stands now.
These are trailers. Got some trailers here. Let's go before the film.
Many thought that I was connected, family connected to the Benatar family or to Mr. Benatar. In fact, what I was is I was connected to his partner, his business partner, Juan Gautier. Juan Gautier happened to be my uncle, who was part of the Carboni family. As far as cinema was concerned, it was very, very popular at that stage, not like today. People actually queued to buy tickets at least a couple of hours before the performance started. Then Film Exhibitors, which is the name of the company, owned two cinemas, Queen's Cinema and the Prince of Wales Cinema. And there was quite a lot of administration. I knew Brahmi since I was very, very young, back from the rowing clubs. At the beginning, obviously, he used to more or less instruct me what to do. Later, at the later stage, when he started more or less dedicating himself to other businesses he had, and I had more of a free hand, he had that goal, that if he wanted to achieve a goal, he made sure he did. I got on very, very, very well with him. I've always admired him.
The Platters, Lola Flores, Margarita Diaz, we had zarzuelas coming in. Dad's got pictures with all these famous people that he used to bring over to the Queen Cinema.
Now, it's very important as a film, the first of the film.
That popular local dispenser of entertainment, Mr. Benatar, was not, one may presume, among the dissenting 44. As the hours went by and the time of the declaration drew near, enthusiasm mounted throughout Gibraltar. At any rate, since the end of the war, nobody could remember a day of greater rejoicing.
I remember back when the general strikes, we had meetings held there.
On the second day of the stoppage, thousands joined the demonstration, which the union described as massive and popular. At the end of the week, the Queen's Cinema was packed to capacity for general meeting, when it was decided to accept the offer made by the official employers and to end the strike immediately.
My problem at that time was that whether we would have any energy to show the performance that evening or not. So it was a question of always being standby. Yes, it was an experience which I wouldn't have liked to go through again.
When the frontier was closed, Dad was always looking for things to do. And we brought the fair. I remember the fair when we were very little at the Alameda Grand Parade. And he was always there and always going around every single stall and everything, so that he made sure that everything ran smoothly. He also brought the circus to Gibraltar many a times, and that was great fun.
But we made the most of what we had in a closed frontier situation. And I think that it made us more sort of appreciate more our local surroundings.
The only sad thing about this is that my mother, who is Spanish, had her family in Spain, and it was very difficult for her and obviously for us as well, but it was extremely difficult for her not to be able to see her family and visit as we used to go. Odette and I used to go with her every Wednesday, I remember, to see them. My mother's been a pillar in the family. We've always asked her for advice at everything we've done.
Okay, go to the cleaner here. Get the lance.
So there is the man who holds the key. Donde está la llave? That is the gentleman who has it. The gate is now open.
The opening of the frontier did have an effect on us, on the business side. Remember, people hadn't gone to Spain for many years, and we started going, and people they stopped coming to the cinema. Hence, we then started our own business on the video side of the entertainment. We were the first company who brought the original tapes, original videos from England, because we had to compete with other outlets who were doing pirate copies, and of course we couldn't allow that to happen because our cinema would have gone down completely.
Okay, look, this is the cinema.
Slowly, and after many years running the whole show on his own, he bought all the proprietors out. Obviously, my father was involved in other businesses, which gave him the opportunity to buy out the Queen Cinema.
We had a shipping agents company. We had building construction materials, that everything came from Portugal because the frontier one time was closed, and everything would come from abroad by ship.
And that's what he did. He slowly bought everybody out, all the owners. There were a handful of owners before then. And Brammy very cleverly bought all the shares out and kept his baby in his name.
We had the business, the cinema business as well, that he ran. And that was very, very interesting as well, and very challenging for us.
Okay, now close the lens. I put cinema normal.
At the age of 16, I couldn't wait to get out of school to work for Dad. It was very exciting. My first day was very exciting My first week was even more exciting because I got paid £10 and I had to pay 2p tax.
And then obviously in decision time and decision making, we sit round the dinner table as opposed to a boardroom. So it's very family orientated. The cinema was owned by Mr. Gautier, a gentleman who came from Casablanca. But Dad was employed as manager from day one. He was employed until 1989 when he finally bought out all the shares, and then we owned the cinema.
As a teenager, I helped out at the Queen's Cinema, and he opened up the Prince of Wales Cinema. And that was down at Bayside, where the stadium is now. The Queen's Cinema was the first establishment that was banned from smoking. We banned smoking from the cinema. Loads of people will recall the extent of the queues on a good film. And when we thought we had everything under control, with the 2 cashiers and everything, Dad would turn up maybe 9 o'clock, and somehow by calling people next on the queue, he got the queue going, and everybody would be inside before 9:30 showing. We used to do premieres as well. On a big film, we used to do a big premiere where, we invited people, and it was great. It was black tie, everybody, gala dinner. It was great.
And there were days when we had 2 people at the Queen's Cinema, and we were sending them away with their money back and free tickets for the following, just so that we didn't have to have the whole thing running for 2 people. So for many years, Dad subsidized from other businesses the Queen's Cinema, because we have to keep the cinema open. I won't leave Gibraltar without a cinema, and so on. And I was maybe saying, let's just have parking. We'll make a lot more money and less of a headache. So when the leisure centre came out to tender the operation for the cinema, I was primarily in charge of the fitting out of the cinemas with a UK company who do just that. And there I felt that it was when my father sort of let loose the reins and let me take over, but under his very close and watchful eye. Dad was always known as an entertainment entrepreneur, and in fact he was awarded the OBE for his services to the community involving charity and entertainment.
Whoever got an honour was given the choice to go to Buckingham Palace or collecting it here in Gib. And Dad always said, no, I'm collecting it here in Gib. I was given it by the people of Gibraltar, and I'm getting it here.
Gibraltar got its first look at the new James Bond 007 agent in October. Actor Timothy Dalton visited the Rock to take part in the filming of the opening sequence for the film The Living Daylights.
If I'm not mistaken, I think the biggest was The Living Daylights. The Living Daylights was the biggest for Gib. It was partly filmed in Gibraltar, and Odette was one of the Bond girls.
Working with Eon Productions during the filming of The Living Daylights in Gibraltar, we were also organising the Miss Gibraltar show here at the Queen's Cinema, and we managed to get Eon Productions to agree that Miss Gibraltar would be one of the Bond girls. But then, of course, I wouldn't want to be left out of that. So I asked whether I could be there as well. I had to send along some pictures and so on, and I took part in The Living Daylights as one of the Bond girls in Tangiers, and that was a wonderful experience. Events is, for me, you're only as good as your last event. So it's very important that we get it right, and it's very important that we make it happen. And we like to think that we do.
And we had to come up with something special. My expertise was in the video presentation, But to take it a stage further, you know, Odette thought of combining it with live musical performance. And pushing the boundaries a little bit more, we thought, well, look, if we put a video together to music, why can't the live music be that background to the video? And that hadn't been done before, and it was pushing both musicians and myself and technology of the time to its limits. But it actually worked, and it was quite an extraordinary event. And I think if it wasn't for the vision that she had, we wouldn't have pulled it off.
The government has bought it so that the Queen's, the building which previously housed the Queen's Cinema will become Gibraltar's National Theatre. So obviously this government will agree with you that it is a tremendously fantastic building to be able to stage productions. And the truth is that when the Queen's Cinema was the Queen's Cinema, it wasn't just a venue to show films, it was also a venue that doubled up as, for example, Miss Gibraltar productions and other concerts. So yes, it is an excellent building, and the government has taken advantage of the fact that it's been empty and that we can make very good use of it.
Now we are looking at moving on to digital, 3D, and so on. And I'm hopeful that a younger member of the family will want to come on board and start taking over the business with the new technology that's coming in.
I finished studying a couple of years ago. I studied business and Spanish at Leeds Metropolitan University. I've been back now since September after being travelling for a few months. I decided to come back and start working with Odette, who's been showing me a bit about the family business, how everything's working, what should be done, and see how we can take it from there. I've always known that my grandfather has been quite the businessman, the cinema just being one of the businesses he has run or owned or worked for in his lifetime, and yeah, it would make me very proud if I could follow in his footsteps and in turn make him proud.
So we've been in the business for a very long time. Not necessarily did my father follow in those footsteps. It's coincidental, or maybe because it's in our blood, because it's not as though from the Teatro Benatar we've carried on, but we've always been drawn back to entertainment.
Some people have always said to us, your father should have had a man, should have had a son. But, you know, we were toughened up by Dad, and I think we learned the ropes on family business, and we owe a lot to him.
Well, that's time for the show in the film. Film start now, okay? Take the lights off.
The Benatars, yet another local family looking to pass on the stewardship of their business to the next generation. Bramy could of course have closed the Queen's Cinema in the 80s when the VHS threatened its viability, but he didn't because he believed that Gibraltar was a better place with a cinema. And I think that's still true today. Gibraltar still is a better place with a cinema. Join us next week when we take a look at another local business with real heritage.